Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
Being very tough on your physical self is going to have a very detrimental effect on your mental self, on your emotional self. If you're beating yourself up all the time, it's not going to do you any good.
But how do we just get people to take those first steps to recognizing those body image issues, to recognize the connection with mental health, and actually to take those positive steps to maybe do something about it?
I think what we have to do is we have to try to start acknowledging as groups of men that those body images are unhelpful. And I know that for my daughter, who's 17, she's able to do that. For my son, who's 14, we're a long way away from that.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. Hi everyone, and on with the show for a bank holiday. My name is Mick Coyle. It's episode 201 of Mental Health Monday. Thank you for all your kind words and everybody who took part on various conversations across social media, marking episode 200 of the programme last week. An important conversation to have, an important milestone to reach. But like I say, absolutely onwards and upwards when it comes to the show. Or it's certainly on a fine plateau, never mind upwards. We'll continue to do our best to continue sharing important stories and really important issues around mental health. And one of those conversations is going to be taking place today. Simon Gunning is our guest. Now, Simon is the chief exec of Calm, the campaign against living miserably. Their website, thecalmzone.net, has got some brilliant resources on an organisation that actually were probably one of the first to be speaking openly about suicide prevention in men maybe 10, 15 years ago. So they've done some really, really important work. And their new Body Talks project, working alongside Instagram, is looking at body image, particularly around men and male body image. Now, it's probably fair to say that this is an issue, body image, which people have talked about from a female point of view for many years. Magazine covers, posters and things like that people have started to rally against, maybe campaigns to get more sort of body normality on show for people when it comes to advertising. But of course now, in the 21st century, this isn't an issue which just affects women, it also affects men. Various different things that men will point to when it comes to body images around social media, mainstream media, celebrity culture, and the pressure to have a perfect body. Now, the Body Talk survey from Calm and from Instagram has really set out those issues in pretty stark numbers, actually, which is what we'll talk about with Simon Gunning now on Mental Health Monday, episode 201. I started off by suggesting that indeed this is an issue, body image, which has been traditionally seen from a female point of view. Is it time to change?
And it's a great thing that we have made some progress in tackling that for women and for women of all ages. I think we can see diversity in advertising around female body stereotypes, and we can definitely see the emergence, at least, of a movement to challenge the kind of unhelpful stereotypes that women have been plagued with for decades and decades, whether that's through the media, through advertising, through all sorts of things. We haven't yet, I think, really begun the debate around male body image. Now, a bit of context, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I'm extremely pleased that she lives in a society where she's able to challenge the kind of unrealistic expectations that certainly would have been prevalent in the past. I also, however, have a 14-year-old son, and he's a long way away, I think, and his peers are a long way from being able to successfully challenge without fear of stigma or ridicule the kind of body stereotypes that are thrust at him from every piece of media.
I mean, the survey results are stark. 48% of men struggle mentally because of how they feel about how they look. Is that a new phenomenon? Is this something which has only been measured for the first time at that scale? Half of men is a huge amount, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge amount, and it's the first time we've looked into this, and we've done it with Instagram. I think it's clearly, we can just anecdotally, can't we, think about what it's like when you go into, let's say, a newsagent, and you've got all the fitness magazines, and the kind of body image there. I don't know, it's not the same for everybody, but certainly for most people, me included, the kind of sculpting the kind of the size of the bodies, the amount of time you have to spend in the gym to get there, let alone the other things that you might need to do. This is something that's just been going on forever, right? I mean, it's always been, it's wrapped up in these strange models of masculinity, which somehow mix up silence and strength, but also feel really, as a society and especially across the media, we feel completely comfortable saying to 14-year-old boys that you've got to be massively muscular, that you've got to spend huge amounts of time in the gym, otherwise you're inadequate. And I think when we step back from that, we all know that isn't really a measure of adequacy. Certainly it's great for lots of people, but I can't see that anything has really got better on this front for a very long time. So I would suspect that 48% number is, if anything, downplaying it.
I mean, we all have our own sort of personal projects, don't we? Those little sort of improvements that we'd like to make in regard to maybe how we look. At what point do you think that though becomes problematic, that might be then causing mental health issues in a person between the ages of 16 and 40 that you've surveyed?
Well, I think it becomes problematic when the person involved finds it problematic. Sorry if that's, but for some people, going to the gym and aspiring to those kind of bodies is a fantastic, positive, healthy pursuit. For other people for maybe that's unattainable, or maybe they've just got other stuff that they are interested in, it's not healthy. It's not something which brings positivity. It brings negative judgment. And of course, it's not just how the boys and the men perceive those images. It goes much more broadly across society, where we're setting these unattainable things on a pedestal as the only option. Going back to, if we were to think about that being applied as it has in the past, very much to women, I think we can all agree that it's a very negative starting point for people to try to think how they need to look. Let's apply that to men as well and see if we can get a debate going with that.
And I don't know whether or not this is true or not, but I almost get the sense we've almost sleptwalked into this situation whereby there was always this big thing about beauty magazines and how women looked. But at the same time, we as men, we were watching footballers at the peak of their sort of powers. We were watching movie stars and rock stars with their shirts off. And we were, I guess, having that almost that same experience, even if we weren't aware that we were looking at people whose bodies we might sort of look at and set goals towards potentially.
Totally. I mean, we can see that there's a very clear kind of biological imperative, can't we? That as an animal, being strong physically has had great advantages. But as far as models of masculinity are concerned, what we're finding at Calm is that over the last 2, 3, 4 years, that the kind of masculinity which has been around for decades and decades, which probably came from, like the First World War, the Second World War, these models of strong, silent, putting up with things, always striving to attain the very, very best, those are being questioned. And we're starting to be able to see models of masculinity where people, men, boys, are able to choose what they want to be. And that's a brilliant thing. We have not, however, I think, seen that successfully translate into the physical body stereotypes, as in like what we aspire to be. And like you say, I think we as a society have been complicit in that. And yeah, footballers, rock stars with their shirts off. Yeah, I mean that's all been a big part of it. But we're now definitely, when we look at these numbers, when we see how negatively it is impacting people's lives, we're definitely going to start to see a questioning of that.
I mean, it would have been great to have this conversation, obviously, in 2019, and it would be great to have this conversation again in 2024. And yet we've had this sort of very focusing period of time of this coronavirus pandemic through 2020. And actually, the survey bears out the fact that actually the pandemic experience has sort of brought forward maybe some of these issues. 58% feel negatively about how they look and blame the pandemic for that. What do you read into that as a stat?
I read into an increased level of stress across the board. Our helpline, which operates from 5 to midnight, 7 days a week, is completely free to call, absolutely non-judgmental, and there to help anybody and everybody that needs us. Saw an increase straight away at the beginning of lockdown 1 of 35%. Now that's a really scary thing to see. However, when lockdown 1 was relaxed, that jumped up again. So what we're seeing is, I think, a situation where we have been told to go from a position of danger into a position of safety through lockdown. When we're told that lockdown is relaxed, part of us feels that we're being told to go back into danger again. And that results in a further increase in stress levels. So I think what we're seeing here is where we've been apart from society, now that we feel we're coming back into society, where we're going to have these strange experiences of being in real rooms with real humans, I think there are levels of stress that we're going to see growing, that we need to look out for each other. We need to be able to put our hands up and ask for help if we're struggling with stuff, because this is unprecedented, to use that word. And so we don't know how to react to it. And I think what we're seeing with this survey as well is that this return to the physical world is going to bring a lot of stress for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. Anecdotally, I've heard from colleagues who've said, I'll often say that my camera's broken on my internet calls because I don't want people to see what I look like. I bumped into somebody I know and I went to take a selfie and they said, "Oh, don't take a photo. I've put on a lot of weight during lockdown." I mean, to me, it looked just like the normal bloke that I'd always seen. But that spoke to me of there are other things going on in people's minds here that we don't necessarily know about, and there are other issues around confidence, self-confidence, self-esteem that we're going to have to be empathetic towards, because actually this is going to be a journey now which might be here with us for the next 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, as we move away from this period of time we found ourselves in.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And if ever there was a time for us to consciously and actively be kind to ourselves, give ourselves a bit of a break, understand that this has been pretty awful for a lot of people, and then extend that kindness to others, now's the time to do that. Now's the time to make that active decision that we're going to cut ourselves and cut other people some slack, because we're going to see further changes. Hopefully, when we look at how it's written down on paper, it's looking like it's positive changes. But we'll stress that again, that all change can be difficult for people. And even as we go back, ideally, to the positive sides of an open society, we may well bring some of the negatives with that too. And people are going to struggle with all sorts of things, not least coming back into the world and spending time with other humans, where how you look is important, whether we like that or not. And we are not currently set up to help young men and boys deal with that in a very long-term, productive and positive way.
In terms of the survey, you've worked on this one, Simon, with Instagram, and it's incredible, that this huge international sort of corporation have been so keen to sort of help you out in terms of supporting the survey. Some people would say, hang on a minute, surely Instagram, social media, it's part of the problem. And the surveys mentioned that as well. 50% of those who said they felt the need to have a perfect body cited mainstream media, social media platforms, that celebrity culture as well. People will also say that actually social media can be a platform for things like body positivity, and it might be a way forward as well. We're not at that point yet, though. That's a fair balance. We've got some way to go, haven't we?
Yeah, but I think that the only approach is that we use social media for good, and we try to affect the difficulties that we've had with that. I think it's great that Instagram are working with Calm to tackle this. We've worked with them in the past on a thing that we call GramFam, which is just to help young people through difficult pain points in their life, like revision and exam time and that sort of stuff. But we can't just look at social media and just berate its negativity. It's the finest set of communication tools that the species has ever had. We've got to work with Instagram, with everybody else, Facebook, everybody else, in order to affect positive change. And I think it's really important that we come at this with the perspective that things like filters, things like sharing highly kind of ambitious pictures, and then the comments that can come against those and damage people's lives are a symptom. That's not the problem. That's the symptom. We address the problem properly, and we allow everybody, whatever gender you are, to be what you want to be. And we do that in a non-judgmental and accepting kind of way. So the solution, unquestionably, in part, lies with the large social media platforms. And I think Instagram are putting their money where their mouth is in working with Calm to tackle this.
Thecalmzone.net is the website. If you go to the Body Talk section, you'll also be able to hear from some celebrities, among them Jamie Lang from Made in Chelsea, Leon McKenzie as well, Russell Kane. We talk about celeb culture. We talk about these sort of stylized images that we see. When you hear somebody who you expect to have a perfect life or gives the impression of a perfect life, speaking about those aspects of themselves in a very personal way that they have struggled with or that they don't like, I think that's a really good way of making a connection as to say, you thought this person had it all perfect, but guess what? Just like you, they don't like X, Y, or Z about themselves, or the situation has led to them feeling a certain way about themselves. And actually to have those celebrities on board is important, isn't it?
It really is. And it just shows, you can only glean so much from what you get through a screen, or likewise on the other side of that coin, the pressure that people are put under to portray these perfect lives. We've been lucky enough to work with some absolutely brilliant people, and you just listed a few of them there who are just fantastic. But like our patron is Professor Green, who you see him walking down the street, and he's a tough tattooed guy, a rapper. He's just a brilliant example of a sensitive soul, who is extremely willing, and in fact, not just willing, is active in the way that he wants to talk about his vulnerability. And the same goes for all of the celebrities that support Calm and our messaging. That kind of thought leadership to say what you see on the screen is not the reality. What you're seeing on the screen is quite often an artifice. Is something which is there to create an image. And if you just look a little bit deeper, you'll find that we're all the same. We've all got problems. We're all worried about stuff. We all look in the mirror and think, I was a bit more like this. I wish I was a bit more like that, and it's great to get that kind of thought leadership so people can look at these, in this case, men, who are all highly aspirational, and understand that, humans are quite often a little bit rubbish, and life can be a little bit rubbish, and hopefully we can get to a point where we really feel we're all in it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that point of, when you've got celebrities, you get this this approach that a lot of people can see, and I think it resonates with a lot of people. But at the same time, it's also good to make sure that, from a grassroots point of view, that people with everyday lives sharing these normalized conversations has a much more profound effect, because it makes it normal within workplaces, on other people's social media feeds, in conversations down the pub or in the park or after the five-a-side football, that you have those conversations as normal people. And then I think that almost builds up your resilience to say, oh, yeah, such a buddy talks like this, such a buddy talks like this. Fine if it's a celebrity, even better if it's your mom or your dad or your brother or your cousin or the person who lives across the road from you.
Yeah, completely. And that's where we're trying to get to. That you hit the nail on the head there, really. I think with celebrities, people in the public eye exhibiting those kind of behaviors, it goes a bit of the way to giving kind of permission to do that too, especially when it's like a big tough guy like Freddie Flintoff or somebody like that. The most valuable thing, of course, is reaching out to help the people around us and putting your hand up when you need help yourself. Another piece of research that we did a couple of years ago, actually, from a very large group of people, men again in this case, we found that more than 80% of men in the UK want to be the person who is asked for help. We want to be there to look after people around us. And this comes back to our tribal kind of ancestry, our pack behaviors. We want to look after each other actively. And once we can acknowledge that, once we can see that asking for help is actually met well by the people around us, there's an exchange of good brain chemicals. When you help someone, it feels good. It's good for us to help the people around us. But as soon as we can grasp that, as soon as we can start to challenge these nonsensical notions of silence meaning strength, when we know that it's hard to ask for help, strength is asking for help. As soon as we can acknowledge these things, then we're going to be getting to a better place.
So let's wrap up by speaking almost directly to men who may hear about Body Talks, may hear part of the conversation that we're having today and think, actually, I've never even been trained. I have no education in almost knowing how to talk or even think about I might think hating myself is actually normal because I've always hated the way I looked, and that's just the way I've grown up. And they've almost not had the education to understand that there's a mental health impact, and actually the longer term impacts around that may be detrimental to their health as well. So into this is a lot to squeeze into a short answer. But how do we just get people to take those first steps to recognizing that those body image issues, to recognize the connection with mental health, and actually to take those positive steps to maybe do something about it?
Well, I mean, we can very clearly understand, I think, that being very tough on your physical self is going to have a very detrimental effect on your mental self, on your emotional self. If you're beating yourself up all the time, it's not going to do you any good, especially when you go into a newsagent and you see society kind of beating you up as well by putting pictures of people who have clearly been photoshopped to within an inch of their life, or have been in the gym attaining things that those of us who have other things to do, us mortals, are unable to do. So I think we can intellectually get there quite quickly. I think, however, when I again look at like my little boy who's 14, not that little, and see the kind of pressure that's around him, I don't know quite how to advise him to tackle that in his peer group. I think what we have to do is we have to try to start acknowledging as groups of men that those body images are unhelpful. And I know that for my daughter, who's 17, she's able to do that. For my son, who's 14, we're a long way away from that. What I would suggest to anybody who's worrying about any of this stuff, who's listening, is to visit our website, visit the Campaign Against Living Miserably. That's thecalmzone.net. There's lots and lots of stuff there about positive ways that you can ask for help, positive ways that you can offer help. We offer a helpline for anybody and everybody that needs it. It's from 5 to midnight, 7 days a week. It is free to call. It is non-judgmental, and we have trained professional people on the end of the line who can help you with whatever life is throwing at you at the moment. And that's 0800 58 58 58.
Thecalmzone.net, the website there. Body Talks, the section in that website that people can look at there and have the conversation. And it's great to hear, Simon. Actually, we're all on a journey. Even people like yourself who work within this field, still trying to work out the best way forward. That the answers aren't necessarily there for everybody. We're all working it out along our own path.
Absolutely, pedestals are very hard to come by, and I certainly wouldn't put myself on. I'm sitting here with mad grey lockdown hair, having put on quite a few kilos, knowing that the gym is open again, but really trying to search for reasons not to go. We're all prone to this stuff, especially at such times of really difficult change. And also, hopefully an impending massive positive change that's coming towards us. It's a bit nerve-wracking. I think we just need to go a bit easy on ourselves.
Simon Gunning, thanks for joining us on the programme today.
Thanks very much for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.